Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskind Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.
Alrighty. Dan says that's like ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. That's exciting stuff here. Well, hello, and welcome to the City Club of Championship City, Cleveland, right? Because this is how it should be renamed, right? I'm Bernie Marino. I'm president of the Bernie Marino Companies. We represent roughly 15 different manufacturers and 28 franchises in Northeast Ohio, Cincinnati, Boston, and Miami. And it's my pleasure to really talk about the future of automotive design. If you think about what's disruptive technology, and looking at the group that's out here. Hello, there you go. Looking at the group that's out here, I would say that in our lifetimes, the most disruptive technology that we can maybe think about is the internet, right? Like, imagine what we would do today if there was no such thing as the internet. I mean, for those of us who were around during that era, you remember people saying, hey, this internet thing's going to be big, right? And it's obviously changed the world. But if you think about it, the real disruptive technology of the last 100 years is the automobile. Because we could maybe go without the internet, but what would we do if we didn't have transportation, right? And the next big disruptive technology that's going to come is, again, the automobile. Because there's going to be a scenario where autonomous driving and self-driving cars enter the equation. And imagine what that looks like. It means that people can drive or ride in a car when they're much older. People can ride in a car when they're much younger. People can go out to the bar and ride in the car legally, right? But how are cities designed? You can come to the City Club and unload your car out front, and the car goes and parks itself 2, 3, 4 miles away in a central parking garage, and you call the car and it comes and picks you up. And these are the challenges that these designers have to figure out. So in many ways, Cleveland has really been shaped by the automotive industry. This is what I found, having been in Cleveland for 11 years, that all roads eventually lead somehow, some connection to Northeast Ohio. And here, Cleveland was, what most people don't realize, the foremost authority in the car business at the turn of the century, which makes sense, right? Because John Rockefeller figured out what to do with this substance called gasoline. And sure enough, there was a source for it, which is automobiles. So we had 65 car companies that were headquartered here in Ohio. Now, Dan encourages fact-checking, so don't fact-check this. But evidently, somebody was running for mayor in the turn of the century when there were 65 car companies headquartered. We own the car business. He said, we have to build a wall to separate us from Detroit. That wall was never built. The car companies left and went to Detroit, right? But that's a different story. So, but all was not lost. All was not lost here in Cleveland. All was not lost here in Cleveland. That mayor went on to become a real estate developer in New York. But the Cleveland was not all lost because we have a lot of industries here, right? Rubber, Goodyear, tires, glass, technologies. A lot of that stayed here in Cleveland. And although in the last decade or so we've been talking about Northeast Ohio and the decline of manufacturing, there's one area which we're really still a big player, other than, of course, the supplier base that I just talked about, which is automotive design. When I first came to Cleveland, one of the people I met said, hey, you got to go tour the CIA. I'm like, the CIA's in Cleveland? This is unbelievable. I could definitely go tour the CIA. Then I realized it wasn't the CIA I thought. But the Cleveland Institute of Art is an amazing place. You know, as people who are here in Northeast Ohio, we forget how lucky we are to have these amazing institutions. And the CIA is one of those places that we maybe take for granted that it's here. I know the students and the graduates don't take for granted that it's here. And you heard earlier about the designer of the Mustang, the designer of the Thunderbird. I just came back from Pebble Beach car show, and these cars that were sold for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 when they were new are now selling for $8, $9, $10, $15 million. And those roots are traced. It isn't because those cars are ugly that those cars are sold, right? In the car dealership world, we say all the time that clients buy with their eyes first, right? It's what you see, the design, which is what these guys get to create, which is pretty amazing. So here we have three undergraduates, graduates of CIA with us. I'd like to introduce them. One of them designed the SRT Viper, which, by the way, was behind me at Mid-Ohio on a racetrack and caused me to crash. Although my wife says it's because I'm an idiot is why I crashed. I still blame it on the Viper. Helped design the Corvette and also designs for Hyundai, Mazda, Nissan. So just a lot of experience here. And again, we should be proud of people, as people from Northeast Ohio, that these three are helping shape what we see in the next 50, 60 years in automotive design. And cars are becoming lighter, more fuel efficient, more technology prone. You know, the cars are really, you got Apple and Google going into the car business. Think about how crazy that is, right? They're crazy for doing that. They shouldn't be doing that, right? A terrible business. But it sucks capital. But it shows that there's going to be emerging, right? Because when you go to Silicon Valley, what they talk about is that they own your online behavior, but when they have the car, they'll own your offline behavior. And those two technologies are going to merge. So the CIA is a part of that. Let me just introduce our panelists real quick. We got Erwin Angala, a 2000 graduate of the Cleveland Institute of Art, now works for General Motors, one of the managers. Welcome. Erwin told me he's still a Browns fan, doesn't like the Detroit Lions, so that's good, right? Right? All right.
Go Cleveland.
All right, there you go.
There you go.
Jose Gonzalez, also graduated at the same time, works over at GMC. I have a couple of my guys who run our GMC store. He says that we'll look out. These next GMCs are going to be unbelievable. So welcome back to Cleveland. And Irina Zavatski, a 2001 graduate of the Cleveland Institute of Art, and she does the exterior design manager for the Jeep brand, which is probably the most of Fiat Chrysler automobiles. I think you can honestly say that if not for Jeep, ... So welcome back to Cleveland. And leading our panel is Cleveland's own Bill Nottingham, the mad scientist of Northeast Ohio, who's also a CIA graduate and the principal at a company that nobody maybe knows as well, but they know the products, which is Nottingham Spirk. So Bill, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much. So today, what we're going to be celebrating is the Cleveland-based automotive designer. It's amazing what we heard about today. So many graduates from the Cleveland Institute of Art have gone off to great things. And you're talking about how Cleveland's fueled Detroit. Well, they're coming back. They came back to talk to us about their story. We'd like to talk about, so Irina, can you talk about what inspired you to become an automotive designer?
Well, my story is a little bit interesting because I never thought I could use art as a job, if you will. So I went to Cleveland Institute of Art with my dad, and we toured the industrial design program. It was actually down in the basement, and we walked through there, and there were all these sketches and car models, and that was it. I was hooked. So from that point on, I knew that I wanted to go there. And with great support of my parents, I was able to do that. Although for a while, they were not sure if I can make a living doing art, but I'm doing okay. So they still live in Cleveland, so I love coming back here. I come here often, so and it's great to be here.
And Erwin, you had a pretty interesting start. So when you came to CIA, you weren't initially going to be a designer.
That's correct.
Talk about that.
A lot of us actually have spent a lot more years in college than we actually wanted to do. So I actually spent the nine-year path to graduate college. I actually went to CIA to become a medical illustrator. I just happened to walk down to the basement, and I saw the caliber of talent down in the industrial design department, and just the stuff they were doing just blew me out of the water. The sketching, just the modeling, I never knew that you were able to do this as a profession. So as growing up, I used to play with motorcycles a lot, right? So I had that in me. So just seeing the artistic car design just kind of fueled that back up to me. So I changed my major and graduated in industrial design.
And Jose, how about you? How did you start doing this, getting in this field?
I opened up a magazine one day, and there was an ad for Art Center. I've always been passionate
Almost
about
went to
cars.
California, huh?
Yeah, actually a couple times. I actually started in Columbus, my college education, and then another roommate of mine who works at Chrysler went to Cleveland first, and then he told me, hey, you got to come over here. They do actually have a program that you get into the automotive industry, and that's what started my career.
These three talented designers, I feel so honored to be here. We all went to school together, and they're doing some great things. And I really, you got to talk about the pictures. So we've got some great images here I'd like to share. Erwin, you've got an interesting job at GM. Can you talk about that? Because you actually work on lots of different ones.
Yes, correct. So I'm actually the exterior manager for accessories and special builds. So essentially what I do is I'm not really brand based. So I actually work with Chevrolet, Cadillac, Buick, GMC. So a lot of my teams, we have to know the brand, and we design each and every accessory. So all the accessories that we design actually enable a lot of the SEMA concept vehicles that we put out, which actually enable a lot of the special editions that we put out on the market.
Yeah, so I mean, for example?
For example, this one here, yeah. So
explain what we're looking at here?
Our accessories really add a lot more personalization to the Camaro, right? Just the new colors, new graphics, new textures, just the way that we put together the car enables the customer to go out and just purchase the car as is, as if it's already been built for them, right? So it really speaks to a certain crowd, if you will, right?
Yeah, and tell everybody, what is SEMA?
So SEMA, right? It's a Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association. It's basically all the aftermarket companies. There's hundreds and thousands of aftermarket companies, and they all come together, and they really just show everybody what they're up to. It's a whole week out in Vegas, so that's always fun. But you have a lot of the custom car builders as well. Chip Foose and things like that. They always show up there too. But I think what's important is you get a lot of the up and coming aftermarket companies there too that bring really like the new technologies that we tend to kind of see in the market in the OEM 2 or 3 years from now, right? So it's a good barometer of what's coming.
Yeah, it's almost like a way that you can test out new technologies for those enthusiasts, right?
Absolutely.
And Jose, you're involved in that, so this is an interesting story about the Corvette. So maybe talk about that.
Well, I mean, just expanding on Erwin, I started off doing a lot of SEMA vehicles earlier in my career, and it kind of stemmed from there, doing the Solstice, and then I went on to do Corvette, work on the Corvette team. But just like Erwin said, SEMA's a good test field to see exactly who's gonna like what you're doing as far as trends, and maybe that you can influence new trends that GM is going to be producing.
Yeah, and explain what we're looking at here.
This particular picture, there's a little story behind it. I got a call from Ed Welburn and said, "Hey, I need you to do a sketch really quick for Amelia Island for an auction." So basically 1 whole week, and I'm like, really scared because I never had anything auctioned off, so I don't know what he's expecting, and just keep on showing him different sketches, and this is the result of the final sketch that I did. There's only like 3 prints that I printed out.
So 3 lucky people get to own your artwork.
Yeah.
That's great. And Irina, you had the opportunity to develop a car that's, it's very utilitarian, but maybe not a lot have looked at it as kind of that emotional driven purchase. Why don't you talk about the opportunity you got at Chrysler to develop?
Well, so I had probably one of the most rare opportunities for designer to develop a vehicle from the beginning to the end. And so Chrysler Pacifica we did it from the ground up. So it was all new architecture, all new everything, and therefore a new opportunity to make a more desirable minivan. So I didn't have a minivan at the time, and I really wasn't sure what was all that about. And so I'm originally from Russia, so I didn't get the stigma, and I went and bought one. And I only have 2 kids, so I technically didn't need one. And then I was cut off always. I got no respect on the road. Okay.
So first person to...
So I'm like, okay, I get it. So I made it my mission to make it cool. So I felt like for older women out there, I had to make it as most beautiful as I could. And so I think it came out awesome. So that's the...
And what an experience to have a comedian like Jim Gaffigan actually talk about it on TV, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's a dad, right? So it's for moms and dads. And one interesting thing too is that I would say one of the best things that when I actually brought it home and my kids were like, "Oh wow, this is so cool, this is so great. It has TVs, right?" I'm like,
And a vacuum cleaner too,
And
right?
a vacuum cleaner. So yeah, I did the exterior. So I was like, but it looks so nice. They're like, yeah, but it has TVs. So yeah, that's all they cared about.
You know, and it's amazing, you know, looking at this picture here, how many people are involved in developing these vehicles.
So I get the opportunity to talk about the minivan often, but this is probably my most favorite picture, and it does take a village. So I talk about like it's raising a child, and these are all the people that are just in design office. So you can only imagine how many people outside of design office were involved with this. So, and yeah, that's why it's my most favorite picture, because all these people touch these vehicles, and it does take a long time, and it takes a lot of people.
So maybe we step a little bit forward. So when you went to the Cleveland Institute of Art, you know, actually now many of you come back to teach. What are the kind of things that you're seeing out of the students, you know, and where do you see things going? What's special about the upcoming graduates at CIA?
So in students, I think we often see kind of what the younger generation likes, also the future trends, and they're all going to end up in the industry eventually. So we like seeing what's coming. For us, it's kind of like a fresh talent. So they'll be sketching all the next Corvettes and all the next minivans.
And so maybe Jose, could you talk about, you know, it's interesting, now you're a part of the GMC truck, but you were working on sports cars. Where do you see, you know, trends going with design in general? And what are you looking at?
Well, I mean, we were speaking in the room earlier about autonomous vehicles. That's going to happen over a long period of time. It will happen. Your cars are somewhat have some features on it now that are autonomous, but over the years it'll become more and more relevant as far as off the steering wheel and let the car drive itself. You won't see that anytime soon. For a short period of time, you will see it in some vehicles, but as far as totally autonomous, it's not going to happen for a while. As far as trend goes, that's the biggest one that everybody's talking about now.
I mean, what's interesting about autonomous is when you think about the driver, not so much being the driver anymore, how do you I mean, what do you do? How does that build the emotional design of the car, and you know, what do you think about as far as, you know, it's a whole new experience?
We had the same question posed to our new VP, and you know, he stated it pretty correctly. It's like you will never get rid of the designer side of the vehicle. There's always going to be a passion to, you know, you're going to have to purchase it or you're going to have to use it in some form, and there's going to be design in that. So maybe our jobs may change a little bit over time, but overall it's still going to come from the designer.
That's right. And Erwin, you know, can you tell us about some of the, you know, I read this interesting quote that potentially in the future people may purchase a car based on the software in the car, even more so than the engine, or what the technology is.
Sure, I think as we've all experienced in the past just 10 years, I mean, we can't put our phones down. I mean, I'm attached to this thing as soon as I wake up, and I'm sure a lot of us in the room are like that. So technology will be driving a lot of the reason people will be purchasing cars, along with the autonomy, right? Now, when you speak about autonomy, one of the things that I feel that's going to disappear is really the personality that comes with the car. It's almost like you'll start seeing a little bit more of the product design, right? In the automotive. One of the things that I do think once we do go autonomous, hold on to your classic cars, because there's something visceral. That visceral experience is going to be very important, right? If the gas burning, you're driving it, it's going to be very important. So
It's like
I think it's going to be a weird blend on the street, I think.
I always think of this whole pendulum theory. Well, you know, it kind of swings forward, swings back. We get used to it, and then it's kind of revitalization of things. You know, as far as you know, your mobile phones and touchscreens, it's interesting. We're so used to these big phones, the screens. You even look at Tesla. There's no more knobs. I mean, it is a big screen. You know, and then there's the translation of, are people ready? Do they even know how to use this thing anymore? I mean, you almost have to get back to the user. And are you getting some pushback from some people that they don't even know what to do when they get in the car? You know, it's got to be a whole instruction manual.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, I personally like to be able to just kind of, you know, turn up my heat or whatever I got to do. Certain things I think have to be non-touch screen, so you're not distracted from the road. And that's one of the things we always have to think about is, how does a person get distracted from doing what they're supposed to be doing? where, once we get to autonomous vehicles, whenever that's going to be, that's probably going to change and potentially change the interior of the vehicle and exterior of the vehicle. And see, I'm a little bit hoping that it's still an emotional purchase for people when they buy a vehicle, whether it's autonomous or not. I hope it's not going to become a bunch of little boxes running around. I hope it's still an expression of that person, whether or not they're driving it. So that's kind of my perspective on autonomous vehicles. But I do think it's going to be like, you took a horse away from the carriage. It still kind of looked like you can put a horse back to it, but I think it's going to be a slow evolution. And I'm very curious to see what they would look like in 20, 50 years from now. And I think it's going to slowly evolve into something else.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I remember the first car was called a horseless carriage. One of the things you can't get away from, we've all used technologies like Uber or Lyft, and how does that? I mean, even there's a new technology called Turo where you can actually rent out your car to others. How does that? When you think about those types of things, what are you guys thinking about to inspire people to want to own a car, as opposed to just use one when they need it?
All I could think about first, I hope they clean it out before they get back to me.
Tell me about it.
The radio station's different. Everything.
It's like my car is not like my family member. I don't know. I would have a hard time renting it out, but maybe some people are okay with it.
And then there's always, you think about all this technology, then there's the safety issues. You always see these signs that say, don't text while driving. Mm-hmm. Are the car companies starting to think about how do you help prevent some of those things from happening? Are there things that can be done from the car to keep people safer?
Yeah, there is. There's a voice text, and we have that in our cars today. Back to the autonomous thing, the safety thing is what's really holding it back because the technology is not quite there just yet.
You always got to have that guy in there in the front just to have a hand on the emergency button.
Yeah.
It's almost like that movie Total Recall with that little taxi.
Yeah, Johnny Cab,
right.
Yeah, it's funny. It's amazing how many of the trends are based on movies. You think about, just looking back at like the movie Tron. I mean, look at what's happened with lighting. Yeah. You think about, talk about some of the technologies you're thinking about for lighting. It's amazing that the headlights are smaller, but they're much brighter, more powerful, and they become a real design trend.
Yeah, for me, like lighting is a signature of the vehicle now. So like if you see a car go down the street at night, you can tell what it is. So we always focus with Jeep and Chrysler brands that how do I make sure the person knows what vehicle is driving by, but also just in last few years how fastly and quickly it's moving. It used to be like you just had the one technology for many years, and now we're jumping over and over into what's the next thing, and I find it absolutely fascinating with the lighting for automotive.
So as far as movies go with automotive too, I felt the sci-fi that we grew up with is kind of happening now. So a lot of the movies that they're putting out, it's kind of a turn back almost to Mad Max. It's almost like devolving, right? Because we're excelling in the technology, and it's catching up pretty quick with what they're showing in the movies. So I think they're just devolving a little bit in the movies. So.
And maybe stepping back, we've got some representatives from the Cleveland Institute of Art here. As you remember when you were students, what do you give to inspire? What advice do you want to give for up and coming designers that really want to do what you do? Like, give us some.
Well, a couple of things with the Cleveland Institute of Art that I found that I probably use till this day. I actually went to school with all these guys, and they're always helpful, always like someone to look up to. And I think what's good about Cleveland is that all your classes are together, so all your upperclassmen and lowerclassmen are all in the same like area. So you get to see where you should be next. And I always found that inspiring and scary at the same time. So that's what I found Cleveland to be unique from other schools.
I still come down and teach very often. So what's nice about Cleveland Institute of Art is, one, it keeps me fresh as a designer, seeing what's next, just like Irina also said. But the biggest thing about Cleveland Institute of Art, as far as inspiration for myself, is just seeing that these kids, they come from different backgrounds. They come with no skills or some skills. And through the years, as you see them grow, because I work with a lot of the students that I taught, you see them come from, I can't sketch on paper, to like I'm doing the next Cadillac, or I'm working right next to one. I'm working right next to one of my students, which is amazing.
I guess the biggest takeaway I've gotten from Cleveland that I tell other students as well is the curriculum there is not heavily based on automotive itself. It's really product design based, right? So if you think about the automotive, it is a product. So we think differently, right, than the other schools. The other schools tend to be a little bit more flashy as far as their rendering styles or some of the styling. But I think at Cleveland, the curriculum really teaches you how to solve the issue at hand, right? So I think that's really the really great foundation of what Cleveland had to offer for me.
One thing that maybe not all of you know, a lot of parents are thinking about, what does my student as an artist do? And one of the biggest exports out of the Cleveland Institute of Art is the ceramics program of all things. And you look at all this technology that's being developed into in the automotive companies, but they're still sculpting their cars out of clay. Can you guys talk about that?
So, well, Chrysler Pacifica was definitely done by hand. So I had very talented sculptors. You saw the village that raised them. So a lot of them are clay sculptors that they make the car look beautiful. I mean, there's nothing like it. But we do also do data. So there's a lot of back and forth. We would sculpt the car in clay. We'll scan it in. We'll take it into data. We'll surface it, remill it, and make sure it's always evolving and always looking better and better. But the digital data is what's used to cut the tools and all that. So it's always kind of a back and forth. And there's a lot of virtual reality versus actual vehicles that we always work back and forth with.
Yeah, it's a true art form, right?
Yeah. I don't think in the virtual world, because we do use data as well, you cannot get the feeling of what it's going to look like, So I have an argument almost daily. Hey, we need to mill the data. We need to mill the data. I'm like, no. We got to do it by hand, because the hand you see the surface a lot faster. You could change things a lot faster, and you bring out the sculpture, And the people that do that are, they come from the same background that we do. They're artists.
And I think both of them already touched on it, but right here, guys, it's the hand of the artist. I think that's very important. It's the emotion of the vehicle comes from the hands of the artist.
Yeah. And so maybe we've got about time for one more question before we go into a break here. And I'd like to ask you, as far as are there other things out there that are inspiring you today to look forward? We're looking at concept cars. What other types of companies are really pushing it that you see could change what you do at your company?
Well, we don't do concept cars as much anymore, partially because FCA is still kind of like in a recovering mode. But we do a lot of Moab vehicles every year. So we're very proud to support our Jeep fans, and they're always done for our fans. So we go out there and we drive our previous year's concept vehicles, and that's kind of a yearly thing that we do as a team building event, and it's very inspiring. And that was like the first thing I did when I moved to Jeep Studio, and I've learned so much just going off-roading, and things that I've never even thought about were just cool. And I use them when I work on my Jeeps, because I know there are certain things I don't want to do. I don't complain about approach angles because I know they're important. So we do concept cars. We just do them a little bit differently these days.
Yeah, and it was interesting. We were talking earlier today when Jose was working on the Corvette. You actually started out with a race car. Can you talk about that?
Well, during the program, it's a long program when you're doing any production vehicle. So there was a lead already ahead of me who was, I was helping him out do the regular Corvette C7. And during that time, I still had a couple other things that I had to work on. And this one kind of just landed in my lap. My boss comes up to me and he says, hey, I need you to do a race car real quick for Pratt Miller. So they're gonna send you some data. You're gonna sketch over it, and you're gonna send that data back. And it went on for about 3 months.
That's real quick.
It went on for 3 months.
That's quick.
And then I was like, okay.
Fast, right?
Yeah. And then what's amazing though is that I didn't think this was real. I was like, okay, they're gonna do testing. They're just testing stuff. Then he comes back one day and he's like, hey, you ready? I was like, for what? He's like, go see your car. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. He's like, go to Pratt & Miller. They have 3 of your cars sitting there. I was like, no way. And I walk in, and I'm like, oh my God, I did a race car and I didn't even know it. You know, I would have took my time and really thought things out. But it was just amazing.
All right, we're here at the mid-program. Today we're enjoying the Business Leaders Series Forum on the future of automotive design and actually future of automobiles in general. We have Erwin Angala, the design manager at General Motors, Jose Gonzalez, lead designer at Global GMC, and Irina Zavatski, exterior design manager for the Jeep brand. Our moderator is Nottingham Spirk designer and principal, Bill Nottingham. Spirk, sorry. We're about to begin the audience Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, the FedEx guy, those of you joining us via radio, broadcast, webcast, or live simulcast at Parma Snow Branch of the Cuyahoga County Public Library. If you'd like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club, and our staff will try to work it into the program. We want to remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. Holding the microphones today are Content Associate Teddy Eisenberg and Marketing and Director of Programming Stephanie Jansky. May we have the first question, please?
Hi, this has been so exciting. My name is Merle Johnson. I'm a candidate for State School Board, and the reason I'm running is to try to begin to change the direction that education is going. Art is really downplayed. The obsession with testing makes it seem like art is not important. And the most fascinating thing I heard is when you said, I didn't think that I could get a job from being in art. So my question is, how in the world would you convince our legislators on a state and national level that art is important and it needs to be spotlighted so that young people who don't think they have the math intelligence and so forth can understand that the emotion of a car comes from the hand of an artist? I just think that's so beautiful what you said. So how would you convince these legislators?
I'm not sure how to convince legislators, but it took me a little while to convince my dad. But he was an engineer. Actually, I come from a family of engineers, and math wasn't my strongest suit, so I really wasn't sure if I was going to make it anywhere. But I face the same frustration with my kids because I want them to do more art and I want them to continue to draw. But we do a lot of outreach programs with Joe Daner is actually in charge of that at FCA, and we go out to high school kids and we make parents and students aware of all the career opportunities in arts. And it's not just automotive design, it's product design, it's graphic design, it's web design. I mean, there's so much out there that people with more creative thinking could pursue. So we always try to focus on that, and we're trying to get to lower and lower classmen just to get the art teachers also aware and involved. So we always do that within at least Detroit area.
It's a simple answer, I think. If you look around this room, everything has touched an artist at some point, and that's enough said right there. What I dress in, a fashion designer. What I sit in, a furniture designer. So it's everywhere. And if they don't think it's important, I mean, they really need to go and see in a studio environment how important it is.
I think it's a little more complicated than I think. So I think when I was growing up, I remember seeing commercials for art, right? So art really is. It's not just drawing, it's not just painting, it's also music, right? It's also dancing. It's the creative side. And I think today, I rarely see any commercials or any support. So I understand where you're coming from, and I personally don't have a good answer on how to get, better legislative support on that. But other than just try to keep inspiring everyone around you, right?
One thing is by doing. We actually all have bachelor's in fine arts degrees. Kind of interesting, and it's all of us kind of keep supporting that, and you do you show by doing, right?
That's it.
Hey, welcome back to Cleveland. As a Case Western Reserve alum myself, I was familiar with the CIA and the prospects back in the day. The market determines in many ways what designs and styles and sleekness is associated with a vehicle moving forward in many ways. such as the Mustang, as you talked about a little bit earlier. When we look to the future and we look to automotive vehicles that are autonomous, vehicle-to-vehicle communications, the uniformity that perhaps suggests on the road as they read each other, as they move down the road, please tell us that we're not looking at the exciting and sleek designs of the early box of the 1980s again. Can you comment on that without divulging corporate secrets?
So that's exactly what I'm afraid of as well. When you do talk about autonomy, I mean, like I said before, there's a good chance that automotive design, you take the personality out of the vehicle because it has to serve the masses, right? It's more purposeful, right, than it is for, say, someone to actually want to purchase the car, right? So it's a real struggle as far as that goes, I think.
I'm not seeing it yet as far as going back to the 80s or anything like that, so I think we're good there. And autonomous, again, is still a long ways away.
And I'm going to just say that I really hope it's still sculpture on wheels. I still hope you have emotional connection to your vehicle, whether you're driving it or not. So we'll wait and see.
It's still got to be aerodynamic, right?
Yes.
There's still all
True.
sorts of,
That's true.
Yeah.
yeah.
First of all, thanks for your great stories you told today. I wanted to hear your thoughts about the interplay with what you do in design, and Bill Nottingham just referred to the aerodynamics, and what the engineers have to say, who are your partners in bringing a product to market. Because I'm sure there's back and forth pushback from them about your designs, and talk a little bit about how that plays out.
So for the Pacifica, aerodynamics was probably one of the most important things. And I actually became best friends with my aerodynamicist. Her and I still hang out. We spent more time with each other than our families in the middle of the program. And yeah, it was a lot of back and forth. But I think the fact that we had a very good understanding of each other's, what's needed to be done. And she wanted to look good too. So. Between that and just spending a lot of time in a tunnel, I think we accomplished a very nice looking design.
Okay, just on the vet, lots and lots of hours in the tunnel. But in collaboration with engineering, they give you numbers that you got to hit, certain downforce numbers, certain aero numbers that you got to hit. It's a battle every day with each faction or each department, whether it's marketing, it's engineering, or it's the number that you got to hit for aero, the financials of what you got to get to. Sometimes you lose during the process. You lose certain items that you really wanted, just to make sure you hit a price point. But in the end, we're all on one page. We want the best product out there, and usually it's a battle at first, and you go home sometimes really pissed off. But at the end of the day, when you go back and look at it, you understand why the reasons came out the way they were.
It certainly is a fine line for me, I guess, just working at General Motors. In the end, just like you said, it is about the product, right? The product has to perform, but at the same time, it has to look good because we have to sell the product. So you have to work hand in hand with, drag coefficient, fuel economy, but you have to style the vehicle in order to sell. So it's a fine line. I think it's fun working with engineers, right? Just being on the creative end, they think that we're a little loose, right? So.
Hi. I don't know how many people in the room here are designers, and we can obviously all see what comes out of what you do, what the end result is. But I'm curious, what is design? Or how would you describe to the people in the room what design is? So we've heard sculpture on wheels and things like that, but what is design?
I'll start there. I guess I picked this up somewhere a few years ago, maybe a little bit, maybe about a decade ago. I guess I can't remember who said it, but I guess industrial design, if you break it down, you can extrapolate the word idea from it, right? IDEA, and if you take the word or the acronym for idea, it's inventor, designer, engineer, and artist, right? So it's really a collaboration of all of that goes into the idea when you're talking about design. Idea, ID.
couldn't have said it better. I mean, you answered the question.
It makes it sound simple, but it's really hard.
But it is
It's really
about
fun, but yeah,
it's
challenging.
fun, it's fun.
But maybe you could talk too about it's always going to be a user, customer. Somebody's going to use it that's not you. So you're creating for other people. I mean, what are the users demanding today? Like what is design being demanded by, as far as the drivers today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you gotta like it yourself, I think, first of all. But I do think you gotta think about, well, what would the customer want? And that's going back to the marketing and product planning and all the teams that work within the companies that try to make sure that we're hitting the right keys with the product. So it's everybody.
We go to a lot of, or we do a lot of kind of consumer studies. I'm pretty sure on the Pacifica there was a lot. Not too much on the vet because we don't want to give any details or anything like that. But when we go there, we ask certain questions that bring out certain answers, and that helps us guide us as far as certain features and certain styling cues that may be in the next product that we're trying to do, that they kind of resonates with the customer. And then we usually go down there with certain themes as well that also helps us kind of like allow us to pick and choose different pieces and parts that kind of help us with the design later on.
I actually have an example on the Pacifica. We had a model made and we took it to research, and we were told that the roof line was too low in the back, and the space was the same, everything was the same, but the customer felt like they lost a lot of space. And we have to bring the back of the Pacifica back up 50 millimeters just to satisfy them thinking they still have all that space, which set us back on aerodynamics and design and everything else. But we had to do that because we wanted to make sure the customer still wants to buy our product and they still think it's spacious. So
Yeah,
just one example.
The customer always wins, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That was a day of,
So changing design must cost money, and the manufacturing end. And I'd like to hear you expand a little bit on how you interact with people who say, no, that costs too much, make it cheaper.
I can take that. So there's things that, like, for example, I know I keep coming back to Pacifica, but Pacifica has like a full surround chrome DLO on it, and that's expensive, but we knew that was a very key feature for the design. And it's a battle. It's always back and forth between the engineering and design. And a lot of times what we do too is like we find a reason to have something that we want. So because if you just say, well, I think it looks good, it's kind of like, okay, whatever, But for the Pacifica, the A pillar, there's like a little glass piece there in front of it, and it made visibility much better. So we were able to get the look that we want, but we got the visibility for the customer. So it's always kind of like a conversation with the engineering and product planning and making sure that, but yeah, we always have to have our reasons why we're making things more expensive, or, that's kind of where I'm at.
it could go back to going back to one of the or we call it clinic or research events where we have a lot of customers that say they actually do want the chrome surround. And we get it for that specific reason because it's a very important part of the car. Or we look for other areas of the vehicle that maybe we can take some finances out to put in something that we really want.
They were always say, pick your battles. So, yeah.
So I think a lot of experience kind of helps too, as far as manufacturing, from product design to toy design when you bring it into the automotive. I've actually brought in a rotomolded Little Tikes toy to show my engineer in a meeting to say, look how they molded this thing at a very reasonable price, right? So let's think of how else we can do this. So there's always other solutions, and I guess as a designer, we're always the one that's always trying to push to try to get a new way to do things, a new tooling method or something, right?
Yeah, that's to key into some of the things we were talking about before about disruption. Maybe designers' jobs are be disruptors within the company, right?
That's
so
it.
Rethink things.
Hi. So I heard and understand your argument that the kind of passion in the hand of the artist makes a big difference in design. And while I agree with that, I have to think that next-gen manufacturing technologies and design technologies like 3D printing and rapid prototyping and things like that over time are really going to change what you do. And I guess the question is how is that going to change things? How long is it going to take? I mean, I guess another way to ask it is, when does the clay model go the way of the English wheel?
Okay, so with RP, I think it's a great technology, and the only thing that's going to really enable us is to move faster, right? We validate parts all the time, and with the RP, we can just look at things faster, quicker, things like that. The clay, in my opinion, I mean, 10, 15 years ago, there was always a debate when we started first going into digital, the clay's going to go away. It hasn't gone away. It'll never go away. The artist is still part of that process, and it'll never change.
But it did help with a lot of things. Like, for example, we used to do clay modeling of the wheels. We don't do that anymore. So we just, certain things just become only digital. But I would say the overall sculpture of the vehicle, that's still done by hand.
And we use technologies like SLA, 3D printing, just to verify certain items on the car.
But not for the whole vehicle.
For the whole vehicle, it's kind of hard. You know.
Cool. Thank you.
Just observing this panel, I can't help myself. I have to ask the question. It's an extremely diverse panel. Do you attribute this to the recruitment or the classes at CIA, to active efforts on the part of your respective employers, or what?
I guess I just happened to just go to CIA because of an old girlfriend of mine. so she knew I was into art, and I was actually taking a lot of biochemistry classes before that, right? So I went from a science background with a little bit of art, and like I said, I went to medical illustration. That drove me to CIA, and which got me into automotive design. So I guess just my path, I guess all of our paths, it's really different in how you get there. I don't think there was any particular CIA magnet, I guess. It's just where I landed.
Like I say, I'm part of my employer. I think diversity is important in the workplace. I think it's important because your different backgrounds that people come from, usually they give different ideas. But in my case, to me, it's just work your butt off and try to get in, because it is a hard industry to get in.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely very few women in automotive industry. So back to that's why we try to make awareness for all the girls out there to go into this, because it's actually a great field. It's a lot of fun, and I don't know. I mean, we try to get our diversity through as early as possible. We try to get as many people interested in this, and it's interesting because a lot of people don't know about this. They don't. Almost all of us accidentally found it. I mean, I know I did. So just making more people aware is what we try to do.
So you have a winemaker, right, that knows wine and is out there and probably judging all the other wine. You guys design cars, so when you walk around and see other car designs, what are you judging? What are you looking at? What do you?
Like anything. That's just my. But that's true. We're very critical. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, get a bunch of car designers in a car, and you'll never get out.
They're
right?
all gonna be like opening bins and you know checking everything. Why did they make it this like this? That was stupid. I mean, there's a lot of that going on for sure. Yeah.
Even in the studio, you know, everybody has an artistic background of some sort, and everything you do is kind of like scrutinized. You know, why'd you do that? I don't know, man. Just I'm trying something different, you know.
Good afternoon. I'd like to know who leads the vision for a blank page new car.
We kind of do, yeah. I mean,
Everybody up here, I guess.
yeah, we do.
It's pretty competitive, right? But it's a healthy competition.
It is.
Right?
So I guess on any program, I guess you start with an architecture, right? You 6 occupants, 4 occupants, whatever, the overall wheelbase, and then you just start sketching around that. And really, the sketching, that's what's the competitive part. That's the fun part, right? That's when all the designers in the studio, they they sketch, and we try to outdo each other, and we just kind of feed on each other, and we just get better and better until we find one that's really compelling enough to go to a scale or a full-size clay model. It's a really fun process, and it is a dream job, by the way.
Over here. I'd like to ask where you turn for inspiration outside of your own sense of design that wells up from inside and from other products in the automotive world. Where outside that world do you find inspiration? And does it sometimes come from other places in the biological world where fishes or birds need to function well in a dynamic environment?
Inspiration in general comes from all walks of life. You know, you could be looking at go through a museum, an art museum. You can see stuff that inspires you to draw something different the next day. You could just be walking in a park and you see some type of formation on a tree that inspires you to draw something different the next day. It comes from everything. Just something that spare the moment. Wow, I like that. I'll try it.
You'd be surprised where you can find the beautiful line, right? It may sound really weird, but you could just be walking and see the tree branch that has this really nice, beautiful line or something, right? And
yeah, it's called biomimicry, right?
Yeah.
You guys
right.
looking at nature for inspiration?
Mm-hmm. The animals.
Pinterest.
Yeah.
Technology.
But I think fashion has a lot to do with it too, with colors, materials, things like that, and other industries that we may not look at. Other materials, for example, like suitcases, right? Things like that inspire you as well. Just about everywhere.
Yeah, I mean architecture, artistic inspiration, but also the way you use something. Like I remember working on a minivan, I'm like, well, why don't we have a way to open the door in many different ways? I'm holding something right now, it's frustrating me. So there could be a functional inspiration that will come from something that you use every day. So it happens all the time. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So you guys get to dream for your work, and you get to add really nifty things to every car. And then, as has been pointed out, the price goes up and up and up. But you've got a range of customers, some of whom can't afford all the detail that you want to put into an auto. Can you talk about the creative challenge of placing beautiful design within reach of every customer?
Everybody's a customer. Doesn't matter the price point. Everybody's a customer. At one point in time in their life, they might have enough money to pay for it. But as far as
one thing that I read is that by 2017, if you can believe this, the rear view camera is going to be standard in all new cars. If I'm not correct. Yeah. So you look at some of these features, they could become necessities. So what once a luxury is now in order to be safe.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Well, that's what happens. Yeah, we put technology first in the very expensive vehicles, and slowly they pollute the rest of the vehicles. So eventually, you see them on lower cost vehicles too. But I think every customer is important, and I'll never forget someone. I don't remember who said it, but they always said design is free. I mean, it doesn't need to look bad because it's less expensive. I think it could always look beautiful.
And I think that one of the greatest thing about automotive design is first and foremost you create a basic vehicle, right? Basic mode of transportation, and that's where you start from. And that's where you start to personalize the vehicle, whether you want leather seats, things like that, sunroof, and it goes up from there. But I guess as far as the customer, that base vehicle is always going to be your staple vehicle, right? And then you go up from there. It's just like an iPhone. It's just like most other products too. There's a natural walk up, if you will, for product development.
Well, today at the City Club, we've been enjoying a panel discussion on the future of automobile design, future of automobile in general. And of course, this forum is part of the Business Leaders series sponsored by PNC, with additional support from some other great Cleveland companies: Fredonia, Meeden & Moore, Falls Communications, Cleveland Magazine, Life Bank, Level 7, Ohio.net, WKYC, and IdeaStream. We appreciate all your support. I think we give our sponsors a round of applause. Our community partner is the CIA, the Cleveland Institute of Art. Thank you so much for your partnership. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you to our three amazing panelists, great, proud Cleveland alums. So we'd like to see you guys back here in Cleveland often. Thank you to Bill and his company for everything, all the work that you do here in Cleveland. And of course, thank you to all of you keeping alive the 1 century of free speech here at the City Club. So thank you so much for coming. And now I get to ring the gong.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream are made possible by the generous support of PNC and the Raskind Family Fund, with additional funding from Cleveland State University, Robert Conrad, and the Payne Fund.